Okay, so guys, now that we know what's in our imaginary number in the representative kanjani, let's do quickly some few examples. We're gonna look at the addition, multiplication, subtraction, as well as the division. Yama imaginary numbers. Let's start with addition imaginary number. So that means if I have root negative 100 plus root negative 64, right? I have root negative 100 plus root negative 64. So we want to say what the answer lies with. So we know what this is an imaginary number. Why is the imaginary number? We saw what square root sethu sinani sine negative ngaphansi. Square root sethu sinani sine negative ngaphansi. So the answer yethu la izobuba. Siyazi ukuthi how to solve how to convert the root of a negative to imaginary number. Basically, it's going to be root minus 1 multiplied by 100 plus root negative 1 multiplied by 64. So the number yakwazi ukuthi ibe nani ibe ne square root sayo. So no root negative 1 multiplied by the square root is 100 plus root negative 1 multiplied by the square root is 64. So the square root is 100 ubani na u10. The square root is minus 1 ubani u-I noma u-J. So the number basically is going to be root negative 1 multiplied by u10 plus root negative 1 multiplied by u8. The square root is 64 basically ubani u8. Then so la sino 10i plus 8i. So u10 plus 8 uzosinika ba uzosinika u18. So la sino bani sino 18i, right? So this is how you add in ama imaginary numbers, right? So I hope konke kucacile and kuyabonakala, right? So asathenye enye nje example nyana, right? We have square root of negative 81 plus square root of negative 36. So we want to see what's going on. So we all know it's minus 1 multiplied by 81 all under 1 root plus negative 1 multiplied by 36 all under 1 root. Now that we have two numbers multiplying each other and the root the number banani the root here. So we have minus 1 multiplied by the square root is 81 plus root of negative 1 multiplied by square root is 36. The square root is 81 ubani na u9, right? U9. The square root is minus 1 ubani na u-I noma u-J. So we have u9i, right? Plus the square root is 36 ubani na u6. Ngit. The square root is minus 1 ubani u-I noma u-J, because that's the only part that is imaginary, which means we cannot figure it out using the calculator, right? So u9 plus 6 usesinikeza bani u15. So this is 15i. So this was what? This was addition of imaginary numbers. Same thing applies as well as subtraction, right? So the only thing is is sign from addition, which was positive. Now we're looking at the subtraction, which is negative, right? So we have root of negative 25 minus the square root of negative 4, right? So we all know what we have minus 1 multiplied by 25 minus square root of negative 1 multiplied by 4. We separate the two numbers. We have root negative 1 multiplied by root of 25 minus root negative 1 multiplied by the roots of 4. Square root of 25 ubani u5, right? We don't know what is square root of negative 1. That is our imaginary part, right? Minus square root of 4, that is 2, right? And then we all know square root of negative 1 is going to be another I. So we have 5i minus 2i. So basically it's going to be 3i. This is the addition of any. This is the addition of imaginary. This is the subtraction of imaginary numbers, right? Now let's look at the multiplication part. Let's look at the multiplication part. So the multiplication part, it's a little bit complicated. You need to understand the laws of exponent first, right? So what do I mean by you need to understand the laws of exponent? That is, if I have I multiplied by I, right? So we can see these are the same bases. We can take one base and add the exponents, which is going to be I squared, right? But we know I is represented by in. I is represented by the square root of a negative, right? That means we have root of a negative all squared. And we know any number in the square root, if we squarish, the square root is senza siya cancel that. That's 2 there. This index will cancel this square root, right? So you're going to end up having negative 1. So I times I basically it's negative. It is negative 1, right? So if I have negative 25 under a root multiplied by negative 16 under a root. So the solution is going to be, first you need to know how to convert this one. It's going to be negative 1 multiplied by 25 all under 1 root multiplied by square root of negative 1 multiplied by 16. Then it's going to be negative 1 multiplied by root 25 multiplied by negative 1 multiplied by root 16, right? So root 25 is 5 and root of negative 1 is I. So we have 5I multiplied by the square root of 16 is 4. Square root of negative 1, this is also going to be I because it's our imaginary part, right? Then 5 multiplied by 4, that is going to give us 20, right? There is our 20. And then we have 20I squared. I multiplied by I is going to be I squared. And you know what I squared basically is equivalent to negative 1. So here we have negative 20. This is the final answer, right? So this is how you work out if you are multiplying imaginary numbers, right? So now let's look at division. Let's look at some division. How do we work out dividing imaginary numbers, right? So if you are dividing imaginary numbers, it's quite different. So I have 3I divided by I, right? I have 3I multiplied by divided by I. So this is what you simply do. You multiply by the conjugate. What is the conjugate? Conjugate, you just simply change the sign of the imaginary part, right? So you're going to multiply by negative I, negative I. So this is what you're going to do basically, right? So then you're going to have 3I multiplied by, so you know if you have a fraction multiplied by a fraction, simply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator will multiply the denominator, right? So if you have 3I times negative I, you're going to get negative 3I squared, right? All over. Then if you get, say, I multiplied by negative I, you're going to get negative I squared, right? And then if you continue further, I squared is going to give you what? I squared is going to give you negative 1, right? So you have minus 3 into negative 1 all over negative into I squared is also going to give you another negative 1, right? So you're going to have 3 times negative 1, that is going to be positive 3 all over. Negative times negative 1 is going to be positive. It's going to be positive 1, right? Basically, this is what you do if you are dividing what? Imaginary numbers. This is how you work them out. I know some of you will think, oh, why didn't we say I divided by I and then 3 will be left alone? It's because on the following chapter, or still on this chapter when we go further, we're still going to divide what? We're still going to divide complex numbers. So if I'm teaching you this method so that you will understand when we arrive on dividing complex numbers, because complex numbers include real numbers and imaginary numbers, right? That's it about addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of complex numbers. So stay tuned for the next chapter, where now I'm going to show you how do we add, subtract, multiply, and divide now complex numbers as a whole. Because remember, these are not complex numbers. This is an imaginary number. We are dealing with an imaginary part alone. Now we're going to include what? The real part and an imaginary number, which makes up what? A complex number. Thank you.